out here. Today, I would like to welcome our esteemed guest, Ms. Umashri Raghunath, for the session. Uh, Ms. Umashri Raghunath is a qualified commerce, management, and law graduate working in the IT industry for last 21 years with vast experience in handling global projects, infrastructure delivery, migrations, compliance, and digital transformation projects. With experience working for Manmar Technology, ABN AMRO, HP, and now with IBM for the last 7+ years as Global Accountant Portfolio Manager. She is also a well-established author, blogger, poet, and a diversity and inclusion activist, reviewer, dramatist, and been past president in the Inner Wheel Club of Madras South and vice president of EWIT, that is Empowering Women in Information Technology. Her personal passion is in continuous learning and bringing in the digital transformation, and is also a crusader of mindful consumptions. She has received several awards and accolades that includes Star in Focus Award from ABN AMRO, EWIT Excellent Award, Most Valuable Player from HP, APMM Diamond Award for Maersk, Eminence and Excellence Award 2019 from IBM, and Trendsetter in IT Desk, Working Women's Awards 2019. She's also been awarded by Rotary District 3230 and several other awards. She is a motivational speaker and have been a speaker at several schools, colleges, corporates on various topics including mental wellness, POSH, career guidance, women, technology and latest market trends, soft skills and diversity related topics, disability rights and RTI. So I would like to wholeheartedly welcome ma'am for the session and enlightening us with your knowledge. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a very vast introduction. And first of all, let me take this opportunity to thank SIM College Management Principal Dr. Nagarajan sir and the entire faculty and coordinators of this wonderful program. When we started this, we really didn't know the kind of participation or the encouragement we would get from the student community. And especially, it is such a privilege and honor to be doing this on behalf of IBM Chennai CSR team. And with me today, I do also have Kumaraswamy TV, who's an expert and a certified architect in various Azure and a lot of cloud technologies. In fact, he is the most significant techie guy that we can have on the team. And the knowledge that he comes up with is abundant for all of us. So I'm sure you will be raising real good questions today, and we'll be glad to answer that. Kumar is going to help me on the Q&A part. And so I would like to thank each one of you here present, because that shows that you are all passionate about learning. Despite of the challenges that we had due to the pandemic, I'm sure education is one thing that will continue with the great hearts like each one of you, not just the facilitators, but also the people who receive. So learners, as long as we have learners, I think all of us will be happy to share our knowledge. So please make use of this opportunity. With that, I get into the session. Today, we are going to talk about the emerging technology called blockchain. Blockchain, though we hear this word quite frequently these days, it is not a technology that is vastly implemented because of the kind of technical knowledge challenges that it has, and also in understanding blockchain, what exactly this technology is, how does it facilitate, is this only related to cryptocurrency? There are plenty number of questions that all the people who are working in the technology space do have today. So maybe for awareness and clearing a little bit of doubts on that, I will take you through a layman terms of explaining blockchain. So what are the blockchain technologies? Why is it relevant for our business is going to be the core agenda of the session today. So before we get into understanding what blockchain, it is very important for us to understand three terms: networks, markets, and wealth. So when we look at networks, what is a network? All right. For example, we do have a, let's take a very, very old barter system, right? We had a buyer somebody who gives a product, what he produces, what he buys, and a seller who produces. And then exchange of goods used to happen over the exchange of goods. Eventually, the money came in and they started having transactions, creating a network of business. So wherever we have a product which has a buyer, which has a seller, and the entire supply chain that is involved in transferring the product from a seller to a buyer, that becomes a business network. Today, with the kind of entire markets that we have, the more and more supply chain that is in existence, the kind of digital banking and digital marketing that is happening today, the business networks have become much more complex. Earlier, it used to be only for a certain locality. Now we are doing cross-border transactions, and there is a huge network of transactions happening. So whenever there is a transaction and connected parties to it, there will be a business network. So the business network will have customers, suppliers, banks, partners. Because today, if you look at a simple example like a farm produce, for example, a wheat, okay, do we get directly from the farmers? No longer, right? It goes through a PDS distribution system, then it gets divided into whether it goes to government PDS or it public distribution system, or it gets into the retail market. Then there also again a bifurcation happens, whether it is through a supply chain management or whether it is through the local markets. If it is supply chain, then you identify the vendor, kind of whether it is a wholesale vendor or a retail vendor. If it's a wholesale vendor, then the chain of sellers who are involved. For example, a Reliance or a big Walmart, when they are connected to that, they will be involved in distributing this across their own franchises. And then finally, it comes to us, the consumers, right? Consumers are the end customer of a product who actually consumes it. So when you look at this overall business network today, there are multiple parties involved. Not just that. With the geographical boundaries being extended, becoming worldwide, there is also regulatory boundaries that come in, right? For every trade that crosses the border, it has to go through certain trade regulations and government guidelines, because of which what happens is understanding the end-to-end business networks becomes predominant. What happens when the goods and services cross across these business networks? Wealth is generated. There is a money flow, right? The money can be the physical money that we see or the digital money today we are all working with. So what happens? A wealth is created. So, and how does this get distributed? It gets distributed in the markets, either through public markets, like direct markets where we go and purchase something, or a private market which goes through a supply chain. The private market is having a restricted volume of consumers who are the end customers, whereas the public market is an open market where anybody can go and purchase anything. So one classic example of a public market will be your grocery shopping, your vegetable shopping. Your private market is what you can actually buy on online trading, right? What you can buy is restricted only when you have a Demat account, when you can get into that particular bank and then transact with the one of the share trading companies, and then you start purchasing your bonds, debentures, or shares, whatever. So that's the basic difference of how the markets are operating. So why do we need transferring of assets? All of us do transfer of assets to build value, right? So anything that is capable of being controlled to produce value. For example, I have a book. If I'm having that book just with me, does it give any value? But I put up a price tag and I do sell it, sharing my knowledge. That's when it becomes a valuable asset. It becomes a product that actually generates the value for that product. So there are two fundamental types of assets all of us go through, right? The first and foremost is the tangible asset, which you can actually touch and see, which is a house, property, your car, or something. Intangible assets are You go for a mortgage, you go for an investment, you go for something, even a gold purchase online these days have become intangible assets. You cannot actually see that, but the value is there on the paper and it is still as good as a tangible asset. Then coming to intangible assets, a little deeper, we see that all the financial products, for example, our insurance products, the bonds, debentures, the shares, the patents we have as part of the intellectual property, the trademarks we have, the copyrights we have, all this become intellectual properties, which are intangible assets. Digital assets. Digital assets again can be divided into tangible and non-tangible assets. In intangible assets, it's like music, the value, the copy royalties that you get out of a product, producing a music album or producing a theater show or something, those are called intangible assets. It's mostly dependent on the goodwill of the product. Then cash is also an asset. It also has a property of anonymity. Why? Because all of us can hold cash and hold it in a very private way. So how do we account all this, right? When we were young, not even your generation, but my generation, when we were young, we saw people sitting with big ledger books, sitting and writing accounts. Bookkeeping was one of the best accounting management system that we have seen as children. There used to be an accountant who used to sit down, have a desk, have a big book where where he used to write what is coming in, what is going out, then all the debit, credit, all the transactions of the money flow, income, expenditure, profit, loss, all this used to be tracked in a book form, right? The bookkeeping, the olden days, was something where the accountant was a custodian of that ledger and also maintained it with such an integrity that nobody else could actually tamper the data. But eventually what happened? We moved from the traditional ledger bookkeeping to a digital bookkeeping using large databases, large online digital systems. With that came a lot of challenges. Why we need to keep record of everything? For example, tomorrow you start earning, right? As students, when you mature into professionals, all of you will start earning. You will start keeping track of what you have earned, what you have spent, what you're saving, what you're giving. All this you will keep track of. Why do you need to keep track of it? Just to understand your financial viability, how you're managing your own life and transactions. Similarly, when it comes to big organizations, having proper bookkeeping is very important, irrespective of how you actually manage it, right? Whether you have it on a Tally, whether you have it on a ledger book, or you have your own customized app developed for your company, or you're using Excel spreadsheets, all that is up to the person who's managing it. However, with it came lot of challenges. The challenges were because not everybody is trustworthy, not everybody is genuine, and in the supply chain world, anything may happen that may disrupt the whole system. Somebody may tamper the data, somebody may modify the data for their own whims and fancies and create a havoc to business. So that's where the need for having a robust accounting ledger became important. Why? Because the monetary balance of the accounts are very important for the business houses to survive. So let's see how blockchain is helping in that. We do have participants, we do have transactions and contracts. I think for the participant side, I have already given you how various players in a business network operate. For example, there is a customer, there's a supplier, there's a government, regulator, all this, right? Can we just as good export anything to the other countries? No, we have to follow the exim policy of the government. We have to follow the Sarbanes-Oxley law. We have to follow the local regulations of the accounting practices of various countries, right? Today with the Brexit happening, we have to be very conscious about how do we trade with Great Britain, how do we trade with the rest of the Europe. So understanding the global marketing trends becomes important as each one of us are participants of a business network, right? So each one of us have a definitive role and identity. For you, for some, I may be a supplier. For some, I may be a customer. For some, I may be even a regulator if I'm part of a policy making part or a government body. What happens here? We have transactions. Transactions can be simple or complex. Simple transactions is what you just pay money and buy something, or just go and pay money and get a car, something like that. Whereas the little bit complex side of a transaction comes into play when there are contracts. What are contracts? Contracts are something that have a lot of terms and conditions. All of us go and open a bank account, right? These days, opening a bank account is very simple. However, there is something that you are entering into the bank, entering with into a contract with the bank, which we are not even aware of. If you look at, before you open a bank account, they will give you pages and pages of terms and conditions, which we just say, go and click, I accept. I don't know how many of us really read them, but those are the contracts that bind us legally with the business partners we are entering into transactions with. So it's my humble suggestion for all of you, when you're signing up anything saying I accept, take a couple of minutes to read what you're signing on. Why? Because a contract is built in such a way that it also adheres to the government rules and regulations, but also acts as a legally protective system for the supplier of a product or a service. So as a consumer, it is for us to understand very, very closely how these contracts operate. All right. So coming to the core theme of the day, introducing blockchain. It is nothing but a shared ledger technology, allowing the participant of a business network to see a system of record, which means it actually enables each one of us to see the transactions that are happening in the business network. For example, it is very, very difficult when the asset ownership and transactions happen across global business networks, right? Complex networks. However, what happens is there is a chance that anybody that you see in this network can become a party of risk. So the current system in its raw format is very, very inefficient. It's expensive and vulnerable. Why is it vulnerable? Vulnerable because there are lot of cyber crimes that can happen over the transactions. There is a lot of social engineering and phishing happening, and lot of the default transactions can actually go away into a vulnerable mode because the exposure to vulnerabilities of the current system is very, very strong. So that is the need why people are moving to a more permissioned, replicated, shared ledger. For example, the screen may actually not show you something on how the blockchain technology works. The blockchain technology actually, when you enter a transaction and record it and finalize it, that is the end of the transaction. It will get replicated in the multiple systems attached to the network. Technically, around 50% of the network systems will have a transaction which is replicated in it. So in case you want to modify or delete a transaction in the permissioned network of systems, you have to actually go and delete it in 50 different systems, 50% of the systems that are in the network, which is impractical, right? It is technically not possible. So what happens is, once the transaction is over a shared ledger, it gives utmost security to the transaction and the participants. That is the reason why blockchain is not only complex, it is also very robust and very, very protective in a financial domain right now. However, the blockchain is not restricted to financial and banking domain. Let us go a little deeper and see how it happens. So what happens is there is consensus, there is provenance, there is immutability. You cannot actually go and mutate that multiple times to correct in all the systems, and that is final. The transaction that you have put in is the final in the network across all the ledgers. So in one ledger, if you update using your public key or a private key and you are authorized person participant in the network with the required permissions. You can view the transaction. You can see where the transaction is actually going, how it is happening and all that. However, once you enter the transaction, it is the final. People generally think that blockchain means Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin was the first blockchain application that we had seen in the world. Bitcoin is an unregulated, censorship-resistant shadow currency. It may take many more years for India to actually encourage the Bitcoin selling. However, what just started as a 28-cent gameplay using blockchain today became one of the best investment options in the West. However, it will take a lot of time for India to absorb this particular aspect of cryptocurrency and get a structured Bitcoin available in our open markets. The day is not far. However, there are a lot of regulations that's going to come along with it. Why? Because blockchain may actually ensure a cash-like transaction, giving the transaction a uniqueness, finality, and all that. However, digital currencies are different from cryptocurrency based on which the Bitcoin is developed. So you have to understand that blockchain means it's not Bitcoin. However, it's an emerging technology that will prove a strengthened systems of integrated network that will actually help you in a wider business network. So we have a shared ledger. The ledger can actually be seen by the various participants and shared across business networks. So there are 4 core aspects of blockchain. What we see here is a shared ledger, then a smart contract. I'll tell you how smart contracts work. Every bank or a financial institution will have a rule book. This rule book actually talks about various yes and no's that a transaction has to go through. It gets validated before the transaction gets approved in the business world. So there are embedded transactions that get executed in the database using smart contract, which is nothing but a rule book of a bank or a financial institution. Then the validation, all the parties who are in the business network will be actually able to validate the transaction, and it also ensures that the transactions are secure, they are authenticated, they are verifiable, and they cannot be easily tampered. Okay, so blockchain is going to be having a broader participation, and today blockchain takes a lot of time and cost. However, when it's implemented at a large scale, I'm sure this is going to be coming up with a lower cost with increased efficiency. So we have seen what a shared ledger is. All the transactions between the different parties in a business network are put into one format and gets replicated. The permission is given so that participants can actually, using their public key or a private key, can see the transactions where they can see because of the permissions they have, and appropriate transactions. They cannot just see everything written in the ledger. It's a shared system of record. Smart contract are the business rules embedded in the blockchain, which actually allows the transaction to get executed, right? If, for example, there is a letter of credit happening between Dubai and India, and somebody wants to really go through a transaction more than the qualified amount. For example, the bank says for this type of transaction, we'll allow around 1 million USD worth. But if it is something beyond 1 million USD worth of a transaction, it has to go through different set of rules. So the transaction actually validates at every stage of movement on the business rules that define the blockchain that has been developed. So the programming language is encoded, and it also takes care of the contractual conditions and obligations that govern every transaction. Ledger is shared, but participants require privacy. So how does this happen? Transactions can be private. They can identify not linked to any transaction. For example, if I'm not authorized, for example, I am a customer of HDFC Bank. Am I allowed, just because I am a customer of HDFC, am I allowed to see all the transactions happening in HDFC? No. I can only see my account related transactions, right? So There is a way that the whole blockchain also supports this similar concept, okay, of identifying relevant transactions to which you can have a privacy based on the permissions, right? Authentication becomes very, very important. There can be a single sign-on authentication or a two-way key authentication depending upon the network rules that come up with, okay? Cryptography is central to the processing systems. So validation, why is it very important that we have a proper validation? Because not every transaction will follow the rule book. So once the transaction comes into, it is very, very important to verify the authenticity of the transaction. Otherwise, what may happen is, in a money laundering world, the terrorists may come and put some money in a bank. They can actually move it from one country to the other. They can actually cause damage and pretty much endanger our own security of the country, right? So anything can happen when the transactions in a digital world are not guarded based on validation. So it's very, very important that we have a trusted network where everything is to avoid fraudulent transactions, right? So your signatures, your compliance, your risk mitigation departments, all these become very, very important. And industrial blockchains have pluggable consensus. Consensus is nothing but an agreement and approval of various parties involved in that particular network. So why is it relevant to our business? Okay, we understand blockchain is an emerging technology for safety, security of the transactions and all that. But how is it impacting our businesses? Blockchain basically reduces the cost and complexity. It is a first time investment high, but however, your repetitive cost and your maintenance cost is comparatively low. For example, a malware attack in a largest shipping company had actually destroyed the command center, derailing them for 40 days of business. Imagine the business not running, close to 8,000 servers going off the radar, because of which more than 5,000 applications related and million plus customers were affected. That will be too costly, right? So initial investment on the right technology and putting up a security system in place becomes much more important, and blockchain comes as a help there. And also trusted record keeping. Why trusted? Because the whole transactions need to be not tamperable at any point of time. That is the reason bookkeeping, though with the advent of so much of technology, somewhere the root, the way we had bookkeeping 100 years ago, is what is implemented in blockchain again. So this is kind of a vicious circle. Now we are only using technology for doing it. Then discoverability. The minute something goes haywire, it is very, very easy for us to identify where exactly the issue started. So it's very, very much you can find out who is tampered the data or who is trying to manipulate something in the network. And the processes are all shared and they are trustable. So is blockchain just for the financial sector? No, blockchain is vast. It definitely helps in trade finance, where we have multiple products like letters of credit, bills of lading, lot of trade finance products and cross currency payments, right? Today we can, sitting in our homes, we can pay in dollars, we can pay in pounds, we can pay in euros. Everything is possible, and that happens when we can actually understand the rules and regulations that are guarding it. Mortgages, all of us do take loans to buy our investment products, right? Be it a home, car, or even a foreign education, we all go for certain mortgages. There is loans also. Mortgage, the difference is that comes with a guarantee, that comes across an asset. There can be a guaranteed investment that can go along with all of these mortgages. And letters of credit is widely used in the business world when we have cross-country transaction. It is used not just for import and export trade, but also for entrepreneur trade. Coming to the public sector, Public sector is where we have asset registration. Asset registration is when you are buying or selling a property. Citizen identity. For example, all of us do have our records on Aadhaar, right? So Aadhaar also uses a certain amount of blockchain where our records are all maintained, because it's like, imagine 130 crores of population data. Almost 99% of us are on the Aadhaar database. So it is very, very important that the database gets protected. Then medical records. Why medical records are? Though the certain countries insist that at least 7 years of medical records have to be maintained by the hospitals and the government institutions, it becomes very, very important that the medical records also become as legal evidence when there is an issue. So it becomes very important that the medical records are not tampered and are protected. Then medicine supply chain. Today, with the advent of the pandemic, the entire pharmaceutical industry is looked upon. We are all waiting for that one great vaccine, and the medical supply chain is a huge business industry. Though we see that it may be related to healthcare and all that, medicine supply chain is one of the biggest industry that actually generates a lot of revenue. And there are quite number of players who have been doing in the public sector. So it's very, very important that whatever the clinical researches that happen, the trials that go into it, the kind of formulae that is going into developing the medicines, all this is protected. So it's very important that there is a very secured environment around the networks that they are using. Coming to the retail, we have seen how the product actually moves from a place of produce or place of manufacturing to the place of utilization, the end customer or the end consumer for that matter. So the entire supply chain in the retail marketing segment also uses. Then loyalty programs. This is what we see as preferred customers, right? Over a period when you transact with certain banks, you get loyalty bonus. You become a preferred customer. You will be given bigger credit cards and making you bigger liability holders. But however, their loyalty programs actually work on point system basis, and that is also easily governed. Information sharing, it can be any information sharing. It necessarily need not be product defined. It can even be on media, right? And how the information actually goes from one place to the other. So all your social media networks also do come under the information sharing, right? Where, because the information that we transact over the internet is monitored by the cybersecurity very, very deeply. So they can, though the WhatsApp says it's all encrypted, still they will have a database that can be referred to in case there is a legal issue that comes up. And it also helps the insurance sector by providing support in claims processing, risk provenance, and also asset usage history. I may go and say my car never had an accident, but if they go and check my car number in the database, they will easily know that I am a bad driver and I have actually broke my car 4 times in the past. So I cannot cheat the insurance companies any longer. The information is all available, and based on the authenticity, they can see the history of the transactions. Claims file, equally, the more the claims, the more the insurance premiums in the coming up years. That's how the insurance industry operates. Then coming to the manufacturing, there is a huge supply chain network. There's logistics involved, operations involved, shipping involved, and money market involved across the globe when there is trade happening between lot of countries, right? And product parts. For example, a car engine to us may be one product, right? But a car engine actually has more than 700 ancillary sub-products. Right, from the screws, everything, it goes into a robust assembling line to come to the main assembly line and produce one car engine. So if that itself is such a robust process, then look at the overall car that gets manufactured, right? It may have zillion other things that goes along with it. Maintenance tracking. One classic example is when you send a courier. Today we can see where that courier is actually moving, right? right from the time you give to your local courier operator to actually the shipment transferring to a flight, then to the business partner in the other city, and finally getting delivered to whom it meant to. All this can be tracked. The entire GPS system works on tracking mechanism. All right. So all these areas is where we can actually implement blockchain. So the key players for the blockchain adoption are regulators, people who enforce the rules, especially our government bodies, policy makers, and all these groups like stock exchange. For example, you have the Confederation of Indian Industry, you have the MSME groups, you have Planning Commission, which monitors how the entire transactions happen. There are plenty of other players than just what we see as a government body, right? There are a lot of regulatory bodies who actually see how the entire rules are implemented. Then innovation. So they are very keen on innovation. For example, Tamil Nadu government has invested more than 5,000 crores to initiate blockchain implementation in their municipal corporations across Tamil Nadu. So that's already started. So regulators are keen on adopting blockchain using innovative methods, and where and all they can actually use this. Systematic risk, it's a new technology. There can be loopholes. Then the data is distributed, and security, though we talk about blockchain being the most robust system we are going to have, it's still an emerging concept, right? So there can be risk of anybody trying to even break through the blockchain network. So that is always there. Then the industry groups, it's often funded by the members of a business network. It can be global conglomerates or big business houses, not just Reliance or Adani's of India. It can be any big players in the world. Technical advice to the industry trends. They do have their own CIOs who are working non-stop, understanding the trend in the market and encouraging best practices. So it's very important that blockchain has these players playing a major role to understand how the market trends actually impact your network of business. Then the market makers, if you look at the markets can be bullish, markets can be bearish. It all depends upon the financial markets position. Right now, the economy is going, having a whirlwind. However, the things may improve, and in due course, we all may limp back to normalcy. However, the economical trends are going to see a huge impact. So it's very important that we all innovate and understand to adopt this as we go through a change. For example, all of the students are now become digital learners, right? There are classrooms happening online. There are digital educators you are seeing in your professors. They are also evolving, and a lot of innovation is happening in the way they reach out to you to conduct classes. So similarly, in the business market, it also happens that you understand in adopting a new technology, right? Negativities, yes, we do have. For everything there is a pros and there is a con. So need high performance. When blockchain started, I believe the first ever blockchain transaction took 45 days to complete. However, with the increased networks abilities, probably with the quantum computing coming up, we can see that the transactions processing times may come down. However, right now, this is not what is happening. Small organization with no business network may not be able to actually implement blockchain. Understand that this is not a replacement to your existing database or a messaging solution. This is not a tool that you use to send out a shout out to your all the participants of business saying, this is what is happening, this transaction is going from here to here. No, this is not a replacement for the transaction processing, how it is happening in the current world, right? However, the patterns for the customer adoption, we see that it's an internal ledger, it's a consortium shared ledger, having small set of participants and then having a referential data to actually have a real-time view of information. It's a massive hub of information, giving all the participants an opportunity to view the transactions, and financially or non-financially also the blockchain can be implemented for the benefit of the customers. And it is the transaction once keyed into blockchain is the final, and the ledger of high value markets are maintained, protecting the value of the assets. And it necessarily requires the enterprising features of blockchain. However, it can also be taking the best of both worlds of blockchain and the traditional bookkeeping and bring into a much bigger practice. So we have spoken about how letters of credit work. When there is a sales transaction and a business payment, the blockchain helps to provide common ledger for letters of credit, allowing banks and counterparties and their counter shipping companies involved in the transactions to authenticate the transactions much easier. Banks earlier used to have a very big document checking units where they used to physically scan the documents, put it in the system, and check for discrepancies. With the advent of blockchain, the entire doc checking has become much more easier because the speed at which it can be executed is faster and it is trustworthy process. Coming to the bonds and debentures of the corporates, we also see that the transactions can become much more quicker. The complex transactions can actually be understood and read in a logical way that the common man can also understand. It also speeds up the payments to the vendors. It reduces the risk. I would not say it completely eliminates the risk, but it would reduce the risk and provide an opportunity for decision making. So all the business to business contracts have an efficient way of having a blockchain implementation will ensure that the self-executing contracts will not put the system into a risk-based environment, right? So it increases the efficiency and transparency of the transactions, and the risk management actually improves in real time. Smart refrigerators to smartphones, all of us are enabled with the smartness of the applications based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, supported with the robust systems around, and help us to understand that the smart devices are actually making our lives much more easier, right? So blockchain also supports this with automated interaction with the external world. It adds business value and efficiency in the networks. So it's open, trusted supply chain network that we can see, which has verifiable, preventable from a risk-free transactions that can happen, and improves the transparency and efficiency of the system. The consumer can make informed purchases. They can take a decision of what is right and what is not, and governments will have reliable data. So again, it goes to a robust system of aircraft where you cannot experiment with the lives of the passengers. So the manufacturing production date and the entire governance of an aircraft technical machinery also can be monitored at a component level using blockchain, so that the minute the aircraft is not in a position to take into flying anymore, that gives a clear-cut warning to the government regulators and the maintainers saying the aircraft is aged and no longer can fly. That actually saves lives. So every technology is made in such a way to support, enable, and improve the human existence, right? Every innovation comes out of a necessity, and every emerging technology is only to make our lives better, meaningful, and absolutely safe and sound going forward. Gaming is one industry where most of you, the students, would be interested. However, remember friends, gaming is also an industry where it involves a lot of money. For example, if you look at Las Vegas, is one of the biggest entertainment capital of the world, where gaming is the thing that's happening, minting money for a lot of people. And again, this entire gaming industry also needs to be safe and transparent, and it also needs to give a proper infrastructure that it cannot tamper the data. This also is very, very important so that it can actually eliminate intermediaries and put a system that is trustable, right? That's important. So looking at the overall potential use cases that we can think of, we spoke about securities, we spoke about trade finance, the syndicated loans, intrabank settlements, how it actually helps in retail banking system and in maintenance of public records. This all started with Linux Foundation announcing in December 2015 of a Hyperledger project and a new Open Ledger project to transform the way the business transactions are conducted worldwide. So basically, this is mostly on the open source right now, and you can actually take the blockchain open source, customize it to your needs and implement it. So these are the key Hyperledger project members right now, and IBM is one of the key players who has been promoting and working in the blockchain space. So we have seen that blockchain is shared replicated ledger technology. It supports open standards, open source, and open governance blockchain. Blockchain can be up for business networks by taking out cost, improving efficiencies and accessibility. Existing topical set of business challenges can be minimized. And Linux Foundation Hyperledger project developing open source with open standards is a shared ledger technology that can be used by downloading the source code and customizing it for your usage. So here we come to the end of the presentation. Now I would go back to the question and answers, and any doubts that you guys have, me and Kumar will be happy to take the next 10 minutes for the Q&A. Over to you, Nagarajan sir.
Thank you, madam. Surya, you can take up some questions from Q&A window. Participants, if you have any queries, you can post your questions in Q&A window.
Thank you. I'm receiving few questions. One of the questions which I found that what is the challenges and issues of blockchain?
Okay, the major issue right now is understanding blockchain and implementing it outside the financial and banking sector. People generally link that to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. However, when you look at blockchain, it doesn't actually stop with that. So right now, the technologies, if you look at a career point of view, if you ask me, you can be a blockchain consultant, you can be a blockchain developer using open source, downloading it, and then you can be a blockchain architect. For example, somebody who has a domain knowledge in a shipping industry or a supply chain or a HR, legal, manufacturing, you can actually become in support this domain and also the technology and support being a blockchain architect also. However, for being an architect, you should also have the technology side of scripting knowledge and take it forward. So how this evolves and how far the blockchain can be penetrated across all industries, only we have to wait and watch. Right now, though the systems are built in such a robust way, the security systems, if you look at today, the kind of hacking and the kind of money laundering and the expertise that people are using technology for, there may be a day when blockchain networks also can be broken. So we don't know what is in store unless this has been implemented widely and noted. Kumar, do you want to add anything from a technical point of view on what the issues can be?
Currently, am I able to hear me?
Yes, Kumar.
Okay. So currently, blockchain is not suitable for small organizations. Like, for example, if you want to keep your accounts, hosting them in the blockchain doesn't suit you. One point everybody should remember is if you want to implement blockchain in your organization, you need a minimum infrastructure. So just with one server or with one computer going and deploying blockchain is not possible. So to set up the thread, you need a minimum set of infrastructure, and blockchain is currently not suitable for very small organizations like which do very sort of street side shops. Which
Next question came from the same person. He is asking which algorithm is used.
Blockchain itself is an algorithm. So there is a, okay, so I'll move to answer your question. Blockchain was developed by an open source group of members. I think you saw in Uma's deck. A lot of organization, they sat together and they put this Hyperledger concept. It's not an algorithm like a software that you develop. It's an entity on its own. I hope, Amu, that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Third question which came, what is the role of blockchain in our day-to-day life?
That's a very good one. So to answer that person's question, just open Google and type the answer, in the search window, number of companies that have implemented blockchain. You will see at least 50 of the top 1 billion companies have implemented blockchain. So today, currently in banks and all, we do encryption up to a particular level. There is no surprise. Very shortly, all banking sector, all the financial sector will completely move over to blockchain. So if you do not know blockchain, you will be left behind.
So basically, it actually goes across all the supply chain networks. That includes your legal transactions, your healthcare transactions, HR, all your general HR records, and then banking, shipping, logistics, education, ask, and everything is there, right? Blockchain can be implemented across any domain, and that is where it will impact our day-to-day life strongly.
One very important question and nice question came. Suggest some applications of blockchain for research point of view.
I would suggest go ahead and take the niche areas like supply chain because that covers a wider network. You can take any product or any market. You can see how the supply chain actually uses blockchain, because there is a lot of research already done in the finance and banking sector and also in the investment banking sector. However, there is a lot of nitty-gritties happening in a supply chain network handling cross-border products. So you can do, I think supply chain will be one area, healthcare will be the next area, and I would also suggest legal.
Mr. Pravina said, what is the size of each block? How blocks are identified? By the means of what technology?
At least I didn't hear that question properly. Could you repeat that?
Someone asked, what is the size of each block? How blocks are identified? By means of what technology?
Okay. Blockchain is basically a name. So for your understanding, a person who creates the blockchain is the administrator, and he is left to do anything, any size of his choice. Please understand that from a conceptual perspective, blockchain is shared ledger across organizations. So what you want to share, what you don't want to share, that is the core curriculum of blockchain. Configuration is it is flexible.
We have came to the end of the session, and the last question I will be picking. What is the best recommended tool for blockchain implementation?
Blockchain itself is a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that can actually, there are a lot of open sources available. If you look at the Hyperledger thing, the screen that I shared with a lot of partners, right? You can download the tool and actually customize it depending upon your need, right? So blockchain itself is a tool.
On that note, we have come to the end of the session.
I think there is one last question, sir. Which language would you prefer as for scripting for blockchain, Kumar?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Kumar, did you hear?
Blockchain scripting, no, you can do it using your browser. you can do it using a terminal, but there is not anything like a scripting language. It's not like Python or Perl language. And there was one more topic on SHA algorithm. SHA, which SHA? SHA-1, SHA-2, and currently it's SHA-256. I think even SHA-512 is implemented. So there was one question from Amu. Then can blockchain be hacked?
We have to wait and see. A lot of research is going on, and our guys, you know, just like how our law has, for every pro there is a con, right? You have a law that protects you and a law that actually counters it also. Similarly, blockchain also will be definitely having its own loopholes. However, we are yet to see practically if this can be breakable and this can actually destroy the network. We have not seen cases yet like that. So maybe more the implementation, more the challenges it will throw. From the hacking point of view, Kumar, you being an expert ethical hacker, do you want to tell anything whether blockchain can be hacked?
The core reason why we implement blockchain is data security. So if that can be hacked, maybe you can try, Ravi.
We would want people who can actually try to break the system, right? That's when more and more innovation happens. So good luck to you if you're trying it. Okay, sir. I think we pretty much covered all the answers that are required. So thank you, Nagarajan sir, and the entire team here for giving us this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. Myself, Surya Dipta Acharji, I am Assistant Professor of CSA Department, Surendra Institute of Engineering Management. To be honest, blockchain is one of the critical topics people used to face to understanding the language. As you see the questions, and the way you deliver, the way you made it understand the people for the mass, it was really appreciable. I really enjoyed the session, as well as other people who are there, I think. And on that note, I would like to conclude the session, and I would like to thank you for being so nice to deliver this session. And on behalf of Surendra Institute of Engineering Management, I would like to thank Ms. Josika S. also for being a constant support and for organizing a 5 days webinar throughout the month. And you are actually looking for the session when it has to start. Every Tuesday, we are actually waiting for the sessions. And it was really a pleasant experience for us to have the sessions and gather the knowledge from the esteemed speakers. Thank you once again. And over to you, Nagarajan sir.
Yeah, thank you, Surya. Madam, Master Ma'am, thank you so much for the wonderful session. We had a nice 5 sessions so far with IBM. We are looking forward to have 2 more sessions on ethical hacking and cyber security. On this occasion, once again, I convey my sincere gratitude to the convener, Ms. Umashri Raghunath, and another speaker and expert member of today's session, Mr. Kumaraswamy, for your participation, and you have given a lot of input during the question answer session. My sincere thanks to Mr. Kumaraswamy and the coordinator, Ms. Josika, for constant support for throughout this program. And I would like to mention one important point. We have conducted so many webinars. So far we have conducted 40 webinars in different title, especially for this SIM IBM webinar series. We have got a lot of registration. So far we have reached 1,300 plus registration, and people are keep sending a lot of messages regarding the webinar session. And some people, they could not able to connect live session due to network connectivity and other thing. And for those people, for the benefit of those people, we are sharing the recorded link, YouTube channel link to those people. And one more information to all the people. Already I've shared the attendance link in the chat box. I request all the participants to fill their attendance and join our Telegram channel for further assistance. And regarding your feedback link for today's session, you will get the feedback link in your registered email ID tomorrow. So don't ask me feedback link again and again. You will get the feedback link in your registered email ID tomorrow. And those who have attended all 5 sessions of SIM IBM webinar series, you are eligible for 1 week STD STTP certificate on emerging technology. So soon we will send the feedback link to generate a STTP certificate. Most probably you can expect day after tomorrow in your registered email ID. And for that, you're supposed to attend the small test. It is a MCQ based test. Passing criteria for generating certificate will be 50%. So before taking up the MCQ test, I request all the participants to go through our recording once so that you can comfortably get the passing criteria for generating STTP certificate. With that, we'll conclude the today's session. Thank you so much to all the participants for your continuous support. Looking forward to have 2 more sessions with IBM people. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.